Alright, so Resident Evil is one of my favorite franchise, and Resident Evil Village last year was a phenomenal game. Highly enjoyed that game. So I was really looking forward to this DLC, and I still remember at the end credit of Village, I was saying to myself, it'll be nice to play as Rose. She looked like a really interesting character, and when the DLC was announced, I immediately pre-ordered, and I was really looking forward to this DLC. So it's kind of saddened me a little bit to say that after having completed, I felt like this DLC wasn't necessary because of how satisfying Resident Evil 8 Village concluded and how well that was put together. Bringing back a few of the characters in this DLC, I felt like cheapened the experience a little bit from the original, and it really didn't add anything to the story. You're going to be visiting the exact same mansion, and the environments are pretty much all the same. It just looks a little bit more rundown because this happens after the original. So a lot of things are destroyed, but you're going to be treading through the same environment pretty much with the original. There's only going to be a couple of new enemy types you're going to be facing, and the boss fights are really not interesting at all. What you're looking at here is kind of like the mid boss mini bot battle, and I'm just literally running in circles and trying to get behind his back to shoot it, and the entire battle was pretty much that way. So boss battles are not really that interesting, and but the shooting mechanics felt good in third person. I'm really glad that they went with the third person. First person is great, but I think that's more for VR than for a shooter like Resident Evil. I very much prefer third person when it comes to Resident Evil. As for the story, I found it was okay. I didn't really buy the whole idea of entering the Metamycete and, subconsciously and tracking down a crystal so that she can remove her powers and become a regular teenager. I just thought that the whole premise was a bit strange, but it's okay for what it is. And like I said, by the end, it doesn't really add anything to the original story. You barely get to know Rose as a character because I completed this on hardcore difficulty in 3 hours and 50 minutes, and by the end of it, you get a little bit more context to if you played it in the original. At the very end of cutscenes, you have Rose on the bus and then visiting Ethan's grave. After completing the DLC, you get a little bit more context as to why she says some of the things that she said. But that's pretty much it, and it kind of ends exactly the same way as the original with the same cutscene. And I felt that was a little bit lazy on their part. Alright, so as for the gameplay, the first part, which is about the first hour and a half or so, is great. It's what you expect from a Resident Evil, solving puzzles, looking for items, combining items and things like that. That's what makes Resident Evil great. So the first part is awesome. It's the middle part that became increasingly frustrating when they take away your gun, which is fine. They did that in Village as well, but how they did it was pretty amazing. But this time they did it again, and they took away your guns, but the mechanic that follows is very frustrating. It consists of chase scenes and stealth mode, and just some of the mechanic is frustrating because if you fail, it's game over and you have to restart to the checkpoint over and over, and a lot of it is just trial and error. So that's what makes it more frustrating, is the trial and error aspect of it. And then the last part, a little bit more actiony. They give you way more ammo, and that's when Rose unlocked her true power. And then at that point, she becomes kind of like Ciri in Witcher 3. And I'm kind of glad that her story is concluded and the whole Ethan concluded, because once you're that strong, I feel like it's time to hang it up. And so it's a good thing that the developer had already said that they concluded the story for Ethan, and this has taken place 16 years in the future after Village. So part 9 will not be a continuation of this, but before it, so that is good. Overall, it was an okay DLC. It's obvious that all their attention right now is on making Resident Evil 9, and this was kind of a afterthought for a DLC, as they did promise a DLC, and I think they went with the story the way it is because they can just reuse the environment, so saving a lot of time and limited budget and time on the DLC, so they can focus on Resident Evil 9. So, but overall, it's kind of unfortunate because I like Rose. I think her character is interesting, but she's just gotten to the point where she's way too powerful, and at that point, I think Resident Evil is gone to a whole new dimension. So, at least we know it's concluded, and overall I thought the DLC is okay, maybe not worth the full 20 unless you play other modes like Mercenary, which I don't really do. Third person I thought was worth it, and I'll probably replay it Village again in third person, but overall I think the DLC was just okay. A little disappointed. Alright, so that wraps up my take on Shadow Rose, and for those that played it and it's a Resident Evil fan, what did you guys think? Let me know in the description, and I'll talk to you guys later, and peace out. Take care.
Oh, I will.
Return and yield your strength to me!